Good Saturday morning. It is time for story time again with Mr. Adam, and I'm so glad that we can be together today. I've got just two books today that I want to read to you, and I think that you're going to see the connection that they make in the lesson that we want to think about today. All right? So the first book is one called Being Good Isn't Easy. Being Good Isn't Easy. And this book has its main character, a little boy by the name of Alan. And so we know an Alan, don't we? Well, it's not spelled exactly the same, but his name is Alan, all right? Alan's a lot like you and me. He is a boy who likes adventure. He loves God and wants to obey Him, but some days it is hard to obey. One day, as Alan went out to play, he looked at a bowl of bright red apples on the kitchen table. They looked tasty, but Alan didn't want an apple from the bowl. He ran into the backyard with his long-haired dog, Norm. Alan looked at the high wooden fence between his yard and Mr. Gadley's backyard. He loved to sit on that fence. Alan decided he wanted an apple from the tree. He pulled his wagon over to the fence. He stood on the wagon and pulled himself up on the fence. And sitting on top of the fence, Alan could see the big, beautiful apple tree in Mr. Gadley's yard. He looked at the big red apples. They looked bigger than the apples on his kitchen table. He could smell the red, ripe apples. They smelled better than the apples on his kitchen table. Mr. Gadley won't miss one apple. He won't ever know if I take one, Alan told his long-haired dog, Norm. You won't tell anyone, will you, Norm? It will be our secret. Norm just stared at Alan. Alan looked at the apples again. Which one was the biggest and reddest? Which one could he reach? Before he could decide, Alan had a new thought. Norm wasn't the only one who would see him. God would know if he took an apple. Alan was quiet for a moment. Then he told Norm, "Stealing is wrong. I want to obey God because I love Him. But those apples look so good." He looked at the apples again. Suddenly, Alan jumped down from the fence. Bam! His feet hit the wagon. As the wagon rolled away, Alan hit the ground with a crash. He jumped up and ran for the house. Norm came running after him. Alan dashed into the kitchen and flopped in his chair. His mother looked up from her newspaper. "Obeying isn't always easy," Alan said. He told his mother about almost stealing an apple. "I'm proud of you, Alan," his mother said. "Obeying isn't always easy, but obeying God is always best. It even makes apples taste better." Alan's mother handed him an apple from the bowl on the table. "I know," said Alan as he bit into the crisp, juicy fruit. "We could say we love God and do anything we want, but that doesn't mean we really love Him. Because we love God and He loves us, we must obey Him." And that's the message that I've come to share with you today. Because we love God and He loves us, that's why we obey Him, isn't it? And that's what we need to remember. That's the lesson that Alan remembered. It's not always easy to do what is right, but it is always the right thing to do to obey God. And that's what we need to remember. Now, I'm thinking of a Bible story of someone who knew what was right, but chose to do what was wrong. He knew exactly what God wanted him to do, but he went the other direction. Are you thinking about Jonah? Well, that's the one I've come to tell you about today. And so let's read the story of Jonah and be reminded that, again, it's not always easy to do what's right, but doing what is right is exactly what we need to do, because that's how we obey God. And so this book is about the prophet Jonah. It was an interesting life, wasn't it? Well, let's read about some of his life in this book. A prophet is a person who can pass on messages from God. Long ago there lived a prophet named Jonah. He lived in the land of Judah. In those days, southern Israel was called Judah. Well, one day God spoke to Jonah. "Go to the city of Nineveh," God said. "Tell the people there that they are being very bad. I am very angry with them. They shall be punished." Well, Nineveh was the most important city in the country of Assyria. Assyria lay to the north of Judah, and sometime before, Assyria had conquered Judah. God was now asking Jonah to tell the people who had conquered Judah that his God was angry with them. Jonah was afraid. He boarded a ship. The ship that Jonah boarded was not going to Assyria. It was going in the opposite direction. Jonah knew the ship was not going to Nineveh. He was disobeying God. God knew that Jonah was disobeying him. And soon after the ship had set sail, a great storm started. The ship was carrying a heavy cargo. Because of this, the ship was in danger of being sunk by the huge waves. The sailors started to throw the cargo overboard, and then they prayed to their gods to save them. The storm kept getting stronger. The captain of the ship shouted to Jonah, "Our gods are not helping us. Try praying to your God. Perhaps he can save us." And Jonah prayed to God. The storm still raged. "One of us has offended his God," shouted the captain. "Let us throw dice to find out who it is. The one who loses is the one who has made his God angry." Well, the sailors threw dice, and Jonah was the unlucky man. The sailors seized him. "Who are you? Where do you come from?" they cried. "I'm a Hebrew from Judah," replied Jonah. The sailors were even more afraid. They had heard of the great God of the Hebrews. "Fear not," called out Jonah. "God has sent this storm to punish me, not you, for disobeying him." "You are the one who is to blame for all the danger we're in," the captain shouted. "What should we do with you so that your God will calm the sea?" "You must throw me into the sea," Jonah told the captain. "Then the storm will stop." Well, at first, the sailors did not want to do this. By now, the ship was close to sinking. The sailors did all they could to save it. They even promised that they would serve Jonah's God. And the waves only got higher. "There's nothing else we can do," cried the captain. "We must do as this man says." The sailors all agreed with the captain. They took hold of Jonah and threw him into the sea. Jonah sank from sight. At once, the great wind died down, and the rain stopped falling. The sky cleared, and the sea became calm again. The grateful sailors knelt down. Again, they promised that they would pray to the God of the Hebrews. Meanwhile, what had happened to poor Jonah? By God's command, a great fish had swallowed him. It's been thought that the fish must have been a whale, but we're not sure. Jonah did not die when the fish swallowed him. He lived inside the fish. Can you imagine that? In the Bible, we're told that Jonah was inside the big fish for 3 days and nights. In the Hebrew language, this means any short space of time. So over any short space of time, over 3 days, Jonah was in the fish's belly. And Jonah prayed to God, and he asked for forgiveness, and he promised to obey. God heard him. He ordered the fish to throw Jonah out of his mouth onto dry land, and God spoke to Jonah again. "Do as I tell you," said God. "Go to the wicked city of Nineveh. Tell the people they have 40 days to give up their evil ways. If they do not, I will destroy them and their city." So Jonah went to Nineveh. The people surprised him. They listened to him and said they believed in his God. Even the king of Nineveh agreed to worship God. Later, God spoke to Jonah. "The people are like children," he said. "They do not know right from wrong. Now they believe in me. I have saved them." Jonah learned that the orders of God must be obeyed. He also learned that the Lord is merciful. And that's the story of Jonah. Now, I want you to think about these two books that we have just looked at together today. Is it always easy to do what is right? Well, sometimes it's just not easy. And sometimes it's hard to do what is right. Jonah knew what was right, didn't he? And you know, little Alan, he remembered that Norm wasn't the only one watching, was he? His dog wasn't the only one who would see if he took that apple. He remembered that God is always watching. Jonah forgot. And he thought that he could run away from God, didn't he? He thought that if he got on that boat and went in the opposite direction, that maybe God just wouldn't see it. But God is always watching, isn't he? That's a great thing to remember and to know that all the time God is watching and he's very interested in what we're doing. And that should motivate us and push us and help us to always strive to do what is right in the eyes of God. It may not always be easy, but it is always best to do what is right in the eyes of God. And our lives will be so much happier, and you'll have such great days if you just remember always to do what is right. And we only know that because that's what God tells us to do. So let us learn from the story of Jonah, and let us strive to be more like Alan, who remembered about God watching him and chose not to do what was wrong. So today, as you go about the rest of your day, think about these stories that we've looked at together today, and remember, it is never wrong to do what is right. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you next time, okay? Bye-bye.